those of you who may not know, my name is Kerry Banks. I'm a local musician, been playing professionally around Lubbock and around the world for over 50 years now. I want to say a big thank you to Stacy Keith. For those musicians here in town and those of you watching, we have our newest best friend in the music business, which is Stacy Keith. She works tirelessly promoting Lubbock and West Texas musicians. So every time you get a chance, send her an email and say thank you. And I thank you all for being part of this event. This is my first Zoom meeting where I am the focus, and unfortunately there's not enough filters to make me look 50 years younger, but I appreciate you all coming. It's really great to see friends and fellow musicians. I think the music business, and especially year 2020, if it's taught us anything, it's taught us, if I might paraphrase the legendary Bobby Braddock songwriter from his song, Time Marches On, the only thing remains the same is that everything changes. And that's been 2020 for most of us. So we're going to dive right into it. I'm just going to try to hit the highlights because this is a very intense subject, the music business, and I could talk for weeks on end. In fact, 15 weeks in a semester, I used to do this twice a week. But if Stacy will go to the first presentation. Okay, copyright basically means that you have, as a creator of music or books or films or whatever, you have the sole right to give somebody the okay to make copies of your work. Okay, that's basically what copyright is. Just a brief history. In 1790, 1 year after we had become an official nation, the Congress made the first copyright laws into place. And for one thing, they knew the value, first of all, of private property, and especially private intellectual property. So that's what we're dealing with here. When you write a song, that's a piece of intellectual property. You know, it exists in your mind. You sing it or play it on an instrument or write it down on a piece of sheet music. At that time, the song becomes the property of you and any co-writers you have once it is fixed in a tangible medium. Tangible medium can be your singing your song on the guitar into your iPhone, or a CD, or piece of sheet music. As soon as it's put in tangible form, you own that copyright. That is your song. Okay, now the song ownership becomes your legal property once you have filed the correct form with the Copyright Office in Washington, D.C. Okay. Copyright that you'll look when you go to us.gov and go to the copyright download, you'll see copyright form PA. Form PA stands for performing arts. That copyrights two things: words and music. It establishes the date of ownership for words and music. Now, the next form that you can possibly copyright, and I would suggest this is probably the most important copyright now, is the sound recording, copyright SR. What that copyright does is establishes date of ownership of the actual sound recording. That's even more important these days because you sit down in your bedroom with your iPhone and your guitar and you sing your newest song and post it up on Facebook, you realize that there are 2.5 billion people in the world right now that have internet access. So your potential audience is 2.5 billion people. There might just happen to be someone out there who would take that recording and copyright it themselves or make a video or whatever using your song. Okay. What legal right you have is established once you upload that song and that form to the Copyright Office in Washington, D.C. Used to, you had to mail it in, either sheet music or cassette or CD or whatever, and it took a long time. But now you just go to us.gov, you go through all the steps in the forms, you upload the song, and of course, you have to upload your credit card information. And prices for the copyrights these days run anywhere from $45 to $65. Now you can copyright an entire album in the sound recording, for the same price as would it cost you to do one song. You can also do that on the copyright form PA if you have several songs that you want to just copyright at the same time. You could call it Carrie Banks Songbook #1. All the songs are protected there for the same price as doing just one. You have to be author or co-author of every one of those songs. And the same way on your sound recording, it copyrights the songs as well, as long as all the songs that are on there you own. So now let's get to some myths. The biggest myth that's been around as long as I've been a songwriter is the poor man's copyright, which is you mail yourself a letter with your song inside and you mail it to yourself from the post office. When you get it back in the mail, the postman delivers it, you put that envelope, you don't open it at all, you put it in a safe place and store it there. And if somebody ever steals your song, that is a myth. Only official United States government documented copyrights are valid in court. There's been a few people who've tried the poor man's copyright in court and they lost. One of the additional things about the copyright that you want to do with the Library of Congress is there have been several copyrights, especially since 1909. In 1909, the Copyright Office would allow you to own your song for 28 years. At the end of that 28 years, you could re-up, pay another fee, and own it for another 28 years for a total of 56 years. Now that law was in place basically from 1909 until the 1970s. What changed all that was a little movie called The Sting, starring Robert Redford and Paul Newman. It was a really funny and good movie. The movie was tremendously successful. The producers wanted to use period music for the film, and so they chose all of the ragtime piano pieces of the legendary Scott Joplin. Well, they used his music throughout the whole movie, and it just really added so much to the character of the movie. Well, as it turns out, the music, the soundtrack, was put into an album and sheet music, and it was even more successful than the movie. It was a hit everywhere. The songwriter Marvin Hamlish had a hit record, and you will all recognize, the main theme from The Sting, which is the what you hear in the ice cream truck. So that's from that movie. And Scott Joplin. Well, as it turns out, by the year 1972, when that movie came out, the copyright had already lapsed on for Scott Joplin. So of the millions of dollars they made off that soundtrack, Scott Joplin's family got zero, nothing. So the producers and the songwriters and everybody who worked on that movie, they were quite upset when they found out that that was the case. They lobbied the US Congress to change the copyright law. So in 1978, the new copyright law says that you as a songwriter, if you own your copyright, you own it until your death. And then 50 years after that death, your family still owns that copyright. And that was in place until 1998, when songwriter, producer Sonny Bono, who traded in his music career to be a representative for the Congress from California, he championed the Sonny Bono Copyright Extension Act of 1998, which now you write a song, it's your song, you own that copyright until your death, and then 70 years after it. So, you know, if you write a song today, your great, great, great grandkids are going to benefit from that song. So that's one of the main reasons you want to copyright your song, because in perpetuity, there it is in the Library of Congress, and your family can go get it. All right, enough about copyright. Let's move on to the next slide. Performing rights organizations. Now, I'm assuming most everybody here is a songwriter and or a publisher, a producer, artist. You need to be, if you are making music that is published to the public, when you make it available for public consumption, it is officially published. Now, you can own your own publishing, or you can publish through an established publisher. We'll discuss a little bit more about that. But especially nowadays with the digital world we live in, you want to take advantage of as many revenue streams as you possibly can. Performance rights organizations are organizations that collect money from various people who use copyrighted music: radio, television, theaters, restaurants, bars, jukeboxes, video games. Anybody that uses music, these performance organizations will collect money from them. They collect money, and then they disperse that money to songwriters and publishers, okay? It's what you call radio money, internet money. That's from people playing your music. Even theaters are required, you know, if you go play at the Blue Light, well, the Blue Light has to pay licensing fees so people can come in there and play music. There are three main societies here in the United States. The first one was established in the early 1900s by some great songwriters like Irving Berlin and others. They established the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, better known as ASCAP, www.ascap.com, okay? Later on in the late 40s, some broadcasters, radio station owners, and some very important stars in the music and the film business like Gene Autry and several others started Broadcast Music Incorporated, BMI. And then in the 70s, a European performing rights organization came over and established itself in the United States called SESAC, Society of European Stage Authors and Composers. Okay. Now, as a composer, you need to belong to one of those three. I will tell you that SESAC, you have to be invited to be part of theirs. If you know somebody that's a SESAC writer or publisher, they can lobby on your behalf. The other two, ASCAP and BMI, you just go to their website and sign up and join, and they, especially at ASCAP, they vote you in. ASCAP is member owned by publishers and songwriters. There's about probably close to 400,000 writers and publishers that belong to ASCAP. About that many belong to BMI as well. So, SESAC doesn't have quite that big a membership now, but they're getting there. In 2019, both ASCAP and BMI gathered in, they collected from all these TV stations, radios, et cetera, they each collected over $1 billion. That money is then taken and distributed to writers and publishers. And in the case of ASCAP, I'm an ASCAP writer, and I'm pretty sure that Lady Gaga and John Mayer and Ed Sheeran got most of my money. But anyway, if you're not already a member of those organizations, just go to their websites. You can read all about them. I've been an ASCAP writer since I was first published back in the early 70s. Most of my friends around West Texas are BMI writers. So there's that. Another big thing that came along about 20 years ago is a thing called Sound Exchange. Now, Sound Exchange collects money for artists and rights holders. For instance, if you're an artist and you make your own CDs, you own the master recording, you own that CD, so you are a rights holder. If you're a musician and you play on somebody's record and it gets any kind of digital play, satellite radio, internet radio, Sound Exchange collects money for you and sends you money as an artist or a musician. So that's the difference. Radio stations do not pay money to artists or record companies. They pay only to writers and publishers. Sound Exchange collects money for the artist. So make sure that if you're making records and you're an artist, that you go to Sound Exchange. Have some friends that have made some pretty good coin off Sound Exchange. So all three of those you can find very easily. You need to be a member as a writer and or a publisher or both for one of the performing rights organizations. You need to join Sound Exchange if you're making money that's getting played on digital platforms, which is everywhere. Okay. There's also some things out there that will help you, and we're going to go on to the next slide. Revenue streams for songwriters. Okay, that's music publishing and songwriting are the best, most profitable ways to make money in the music industry, and especially long term. There's in the commercial world, you hear songs all the time from artists that were back in the 70s even. So there's a number of ways that you can make money. And of course, there's physical products, CDs, cassettes, vinyl. Vinyl's kind of making a comeback. CDs, I even say that word to somebody under 20 years old and they go, huh? And also is digital products, iTunes, Apple Music, etc., where you can download music to your computer. And of course, the ever popular streaming services, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, etc. There's also a big market, especially for the rock industry, in video games. Also, greeting cards, toys, ringtones, ringbacks. Sheet music is not as big as it used to be, but it is still a profitable way to make music and to make money off your music. Song folios, downloads, instruction books are really big these days. A lot of them, they will appear on a website and you can download it or you can just use it off the website. The biggie right now, we're gonna hit this pretty hard, is synchronization rights. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a second. That's the use of songs and underscore music in movies and TV. Theatrical productions, of course, karaoke tracks, commercial jingles, works for hire, and song contests. Now, just to give you an idea how music has changed, especially the last 20, 25 years, back in 1996, the Dixie Chicks had their first album, Wide Open Spaces, that sold over 10 million copies of the CD, okay? Now, if you sell $1 million worth of music, they used to award you a gold record. If you sell 1 million copies of a piece of music, it was called platinum. If you sold 5 million copies of your CD or whatever, it was called diamond. The Dixie Chicks' first album was double diamond. They sold more than 10 million copies. and got lots of airplay and made a lot of money off those records. Contrast that now with in 2020, one of the biggest #1 songs was by an artist named Cardi B. She had a X-rated song called WAP that only sold 125,000 downloads on iTunes. However, it had, as of today, 93 million streams from Spotify, Pandora, Tidal, all the other streaming services. And it had over 1 billion views on YouTube. So that's how the industry has changed. Of course, with YouTube, pays 5.1% for a view. Spotify pays 0.004 cents to songwriters, to artists, pays 0.006 to songwriters and publishers. Pandora pays 0.001, and Apple Music pays 0.006. For, let's see here, Spotify pays $3,500 for 1 million streams. So there you go. That's the difference that we're in today. But the digital world is here to stay. Things like TikTok and all the other different video platforms are providing ways to make music. What happens, say, for instance, Cardi B, once she reaches a certain point on YouTube of views, all of a sudden they start selling advertising on her video. Generally, you have to sit through 30 seconds of a commercial just to see the video. But the people who buy advertising, Dove soap, Chevrolet, whatever, they pay a portion to YouTube, and YouTube pays Cardi B. So that's how you make money there. All right. An interesting statistic in this digital world is Spotify is worldwide, and they probably got servers that would fill up an entire football field just in size. But Spotify alone now uploads 40,000 new tracks every day. So just blows my mind that there's gazillions of songs out there to choose from, every possible genre you can imagine. You want to be there, even though you may start very small. You want to be on Spotify and Pandora and YouTube and everywhere you can get your music. Especially these days in films. Films and film producers have to synchronize music with the film. And you have to, if you're a music producer and a film producer, you have to have a synchronization right to put music to the video that you've made. There's all kinds of different ways that happens. If I may, tell a little story from my good friend, the beautiful and talented, extremely talented Hannah Jackson. Well, a few years ago, Hannah had a song that she had recorded for a Christmas album with her friend Amy Ferris, and she had taken the classic Jingle Bells and sort of rewritten it and added some verses to it. And there was producers for the Hallmark Channel, Christmas movie channel, that wanted to use her song in a film called The Christmas Cookies. Well, there was an agency called GODIY Records, GoDIYRecords.com, that heard Hannah's song and they liked it. And their business is to try to get songs into films. And so they arranged a meeting with the Hallmark people to play them this song. And the Hallmark people loved the song, included it in the movie. Well, there's several different ways that synchronization rights work, especially for artists. If they use your song and use you performing it, it's called a mirror contract. They have to pay for both of those, the rights to use the song and the rights to use the recording that they're going to put on there. Mirror contract, synchronization rights. Well, they loved Hannah's song and they loved the way that she did it. And so they made an agreement with her. There's three basic options that film companies use. One is that we place the music ourselves, and 50% of the money goes to the artist, 50% to the Go DIY people that place the song for you. You split it right down the middle. The other was, number two was we place the music through a separate licensing company, and then they just split 50% goes to the artist, 35% to the licensing company, and 15% to the DIY folks. The other one is this particular song, Hannah was able to copyright it, even though it's already well-known song, but it's in public domain. She was able to copyright with the new additions that she made to it as a derivative. So Hannah owns that version of Jingle Bells and that recording of Jingle Bells. Very important. She owns both sides of that. So when they wanted to use it, they had to pay her for both sides of it. And that's a success story from right here in Lubbock, Texas. And the good news is it plays reruns every Christmas from November, the middle of November till December 26th, generally. And she collects money from her PRO on those performances, through her ASCAP Performing Rights Organization. So there's what they used to call mailbox money coming in. These days, you don't get mailbox money. You have to go direct deposit. But okay, there's another story that's very important, happened very recently. My friend Jeremy Boring, who is a big executive in the Daily Wire website, he and his buddy Michael Knowles did a little video for Please Come Home for Christmas. It was a old song from back in the 60s, and the Eagles did a redo of it. And so Michael and Jeremy did this really cool video, and they wanted to put it out on their Daily Wire website, which has millions and millions and millions of viewers. When they contacted the publisher said, you can put it on Facebook, but you can't use your own website. And they charged them a pretty good chunk of change just to be able to put it up on Facebook. So that's one of the reasons that you want to have your songs copywritten, and you want to have them through your PRO, and because you own, especially in the video world, you can say who can use this as a video and who can't. So that's very important, because there's a lot of sketchy people out there on the internet that you wouldn't want your song associated with. So another really cool story about video, and this kind of comes under the heading of works for hire. My friend Wendy Colon from Austin, singer-songwriter, really good writer. She was contacted by the Coca-Cola company a few years ago, and they wanted her and some other writers to write them little 30, 45, and 60-second commercials for a Coke that they were going to do animation videos with. And so Wendy actually recorded the song the day before she had to turn it in, just her and the ukulele on her laptop, sent it in, and the Coca-Cola people loved it. And so they put it with this animation, I'm happy as I can be, because I got you and you got me. It's a little cute little commercial that they made 3 different versions, 60-second, 45-second, and 30-second commercials that played for, gosh, years. They paid her a flat fee to write, and then she gave them the rights to that song that she had produced. She would play it every now and then in some of her gigs, and her audiences loved it. And they wanted to know if they could buy a recording of it. And so she went in and redid the song and added some more parts to it and recorded it. And believe it or not, the Coca-Cola company gave her permission to do that. The only thing that they wanted was half the publishing rights for her new version of that. And she still sings that song today, and it's one of the most popular songs in her set. So you just never know when the opportunity has come. If you're prepared, you just never know where your songs are going to wind up. And that's the beauty of what we do. Now, Stacy said, if you got questions, just post them up there. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And I think let's go, Stacy, if we could, to the next slide, which is types of music and production. Okay, companies. Now, this is very important. The Texas Governor's Office is really encouraging songwriters, engineers, producers, everybody to establish official companies, and it's a good idea. There are 3 basic kinds of companies, publishing and music production companies. Of course, the first is a sole proprietorship. You're a singer-songwriter, you do singles, you make your own albums, you own your own publishing. You can have that as a sole proprietorship. It is a company, a DBA company, you know. I had a company for a while, DBA, doing business as Carrie C. Banks Music. Now I've since folded all those, my publishing company and my record company, into an LLC. The sole proprietorship now, you have to get a DBA certificate from the local courthouse, from the county where the business is located. It's a very nominal fee to get that. The next possible type of business is an LLP, limited liability partnership. Now, a limited liability partnership requires multiple members. It may be 2 people, it may be, in the case of the Maines Brothers Band, we have a limited liability partnership that includes 7 members, okay? Each having the share in the company, an equal share. That requires that you get a DBA, doing business as, and legal partnership documents filed in the county where the business is located, okay? It's also recommended that your partnerships have regular meetings, and you will find the more successful you are, the more meetings you're going to have. In fact, you may, if you get really successful, the word meeting will start to sound like a swear word. LLC, that's probably the most commonly used, especially for bands, but you know, I'm a solo artist, and I have one limited liability corporation myself. That's with 1 or more members, each partner having a share in the business. Now, limited liability corporation requires a DBA, you know, Carrie C. Banks, doing business as Bank On It Music, LLC. And you go to your friendly lawyer, and he draws up a big contract, and you fill out all these forms that you have to turn into the state of Texas, and it's in a big notebook, and you pay a fee, and you pay a yearly franchise tax as well. But that's a very good, I would recommend, if you're a band, that you do a limited liability corporation. If not, then at least a limited liability partnership. The main difference is in a limited liability partnership, every member of the partnership is 100% liable for any expenses incurred and any taxes paid or any lawsuits. Whereas on the limited liability corporation, the corporation owns everything. In fact, if you're a band, you can put all your instruments, your van, your trailer, all your merch, all your CDs, everything under the corporation. So if for some reason, some guy in Rooster Poot, Arkansas sues you because he thinks you ripped off his song that, excuse me, thinks you ripped off his song, even if he sues you, he can only sue the corporation. So it's a good way for bands especially to establish their goals, especially establish their hierarchy in the band, really specifically say who owns what. You know, two members of the band wrote a song, they own that song. It's really a good way and a very legal way for you to take care of business. And I would definitely advise you seek legal advice before establishing any of the above entities. One of the things, and you can find these on the internet, is understanding contracts. That's the industry legally runs on contracts. Contract basically establishes two things. First one is both parties, whoever's entering into the contract, both parties agree to what they're agreeing to, right? That's where you want your lawyer present. More importantly, secondly, 6 years down the road, 6 months, 20 years down the road, both parties have to remember the same thing because it's written down. So that it helps keep everybody honest and everybody knowing what's expected of them. So you got to take care of business in this business. We make music because we love to make music. We get on stage and perform music for our beloved friends and audience because we love to perform music. That's why we do it. We also got to buy groceries and pay the rent. And so I would encourage, especially all the younger artists out there, very quickly determine what your time and your talent is worth. Because that's what we're selling, you know. We're in the song business. Basically what we sell is imagination. And if more people that tune into our imagination, the more people that we're going to have listening to our stuff, buying our stuff. We're here to sell imagination. When we're on stage performing, we are developing a relationship with this audience. That's the main thing that we're looking for. In the business of it, in the songwriting business, the fuel that fuels the industry is the song, number one. But the drivetrain is the relationships that we make. So that's probably the most important thing you can do as an artist, as a writer, is relationships with other musicians, with club owners, with restaurant owners, with local media, with Stacy Keith from the Lubbock Cultural Arts, relationships. And it can even be online. You know, I have people email me all the time from as far away as Sweden and Malaysia. Hey, listen to your song and I really like it. And that's when I direct them to my website, www.careycbanks.com. Now, 30 years ago, I would never in my life have thought that I would use on a daily basis www.com, but also never dreamed in my life that there would be a little gadget like this that basically holds all the information known to mankind. on this little device here. And we use that device to take pictures of food and kittens. But it's also very handy for songwriters. You're going down the road, you get this idea for a song, and you just flip on your phone there and you sing it. And there have been, in the past 10 years, Grammy-winning albums recorded on an iPhone. So we are definitely in a new world. When I first started recording songs to send to publishers here in Lubbock, there was a little studio down on Avenue Q. It's just a dirt lot now, but it was Don Caldwell Studios. And I started recording there in 1971. He had a two-track tape recorder and egg cartons on the wall to try to muffle the sound. And I remember he didn't have any carpet on the floor yet. And about halfway through my first demo, he stopped and said, "Dude, you can't tap your foot. It's coming through the mics." So that was where it started. And it, from there it progressed to the most incredible music studio from the 70s studios with Scott Ferris, Route 1 Acuff Studios, Alan Crossland, and then home studios everywhere. A lot of people have gone to creating their own little studio. And if you're about halfway smart technology-wise, you can get some pretty decent sounds there. So the industry has definitely changed in that way. What's also changed is what's called the statutory royalty rate. Statutory meaning legal statute. When I first started signing my first publishing contract for some songs, then the statutory royalty rate for selling of music, singles, albums, whatever, was the publisher would receive 2 cents for every record sold. The publisher would then split that 2 cents with the writer or the writers. So even if you had a million seller, you didn't make a lot of money. That figure has now grown from 2 cents to 0.091, 9 cents per download. Say somebody buys your song on iTunes, you are owed 9 cents for every time. If you record an album and you use some cover tunes from another artist, you have to pay them 9 cents per song for every CD or USB or whatever download that you sell. So that's called a compulsory license and a statutory rate. The Music Modernization Act from a couple of years ago in Congress was attempting to deal with that and perhaps do some laws, once again, to try to get songwriters more money. In the end, the Music Modernization Act basically gave songwriters and publishers a bigger slice of a pie that essentially doesn't exist anymore. Very little physical product is ever sold anymore. Very little download of music from iTunes or wherever. Still some, but it's everything now is the streaming market. So we're having to deal with that. So, and with every new technology that comes along, seems like a new law has to be enacted to cover that. But anyway, that's where we are, 2020. Let's look at the last, is that the last slide, Stacy? Resources for songwriters and publishers. Okay, very good. With the internet, there is gazillions of people out there offering help to songwriters, and their main goal, most of those, is to separate you from your cash. But there are some legitimate organizations that can really be beneficial resources to you. ASCAP, BMI, and SESAC, the Texas Music Office, that's in Austin. A little interesting fact about that, the Texas Music Office was started during George Bush's administration as governor of Texas. And it has since grown immensely. And one of the main things that it has done recently is the music-friendly communities. And very interestingly, the new young man who's in charge of the Texas Music Office is a young man named Brendan Anthony. Brendan, before he became head of the music office, used to play fiddle for Pat Green. So he knows the industry and he definitely knows Texas. There's also several other resources like the Nashville Songwriters Association, the NashvilleSongwriters.com or NSAI. And there's locally, you know, we've got Stacy here with Lubbock Cultural Arts. And one of the things that's really started to happen in the last couple of years that I have to take my hat off to Dustin Six and Jerry Serrano, who have a songwriters night every Monday night at the Blue Light. I mean, if you write a song and you're brave enough to get up there in front of a bunch of other songwriters and patrons, you're welcome to sign up and get up there and play your tunes. And once a year, they have a big contest and that they hold throughout the years to get the finalists. And it's really, really one of the greatest things that's happened for songwriters, especially in West Texas. Also, I would like to just put a good word out for my friend, Charles Moster and the Moster Law Firm. If you need any kind of legal help here in Lubbock, or they also have offices in Georgetown, Texas, and Midland, Texas, and Dallas, Texas. Charles is a songwriter himself, and he has written several songs. He's written some plays that have been on radio. He's dealt with copyright issues. He knows the business inside and out from both sides. So if you have any questions, especially, you know, for setting up your LLC or your LLP, just go to Charles's firm and they will hook you up with your own LLC.
I'm going to turn off our screen share.
Okay.
But I want to tag on to what you said, Carrie, before we get off this, because if I don't, I'll forget. If you are a musician in Lubbock, Texas, and have not registered with the Texas Music Office Musician Directory, we encourage you to do that. It's free. It's a way to be listed among all, I mean, 1,000 of Texas artists. And what's cool about it is venues and booking agents can search within that database and put in certain criteria and find you. And so it is one of the reasons for this, our music community designation is to help maintain that directory. So I encourage you to go check out their website. I'm really glad Carrie added that on his slide. They are a great resource. Also with the LLC, the Texas Music Office, on some of the webinars I've been a part of with our Music Friendly program, they cannot stress enough the importance of, even as a starting out musician, the importance of the LLC process and really setting up yourself as a business. Who would have thought we'd ever have a pandemic? And what it has shown them, I think, is that people that were not set up in that way had a much harder time accessing some of the COVID relief funding that was available, the PPP loans and some of those other resources, whereas people that were set up as an LLC and had everything kind of in place had a much easier time with those processes. So they're really encouraging us to encourage you as musicians, if you've not taken that step, now is the time, before hopefully nothing ever like this will happen again, but before something like this happens again. So the LLC process is critically important. Okay, that's all I had to say. We hope we'll have another workshop in the spring, and I think the consensus from our town hall meetings that we did in the fall was to kind of maybe do a marketing workshop, which I think is a really nice way to kind of segue into some other topics from today, as far as marketing and relationship building and doing some things like that. So watch for that. And I just appreciate all of you. And if we can help, please let us know. So
Thank
Carrie, do you
again,
have any
Stacy.
words?
I love talking about music business. Like I say, I could talk about the business and about songwriting for 3 weeks straight. So glad we were able to condense it. I just want to say thanks to all my friends that showed up on today's Zoom. It's great to see you. All you songwriters out there, go write a song
And then let us know about it.
and let us know about it. Yeah.
We can help. All right. Well, thank y'all again for coming, and I hope we'll Zoom with you again in a couple of months when we'll do our next one, and I'll send that out to everybody. So now I have your email address. So watch out.
Blessings.
Thank you. Okay.